What's good, YouTube? It's Jay here, and today we're going to be interviewing my friend here, the Farseer. I want to say CEO of Rise of the Mandalorians. Would that be the proper title to give you? CEO?
Sure. CEO, creator, Rise of the Mandalorians. As long as they associate it with the mod, that's good.
Good. How are you doing today, man?
Doing well. Yourself?
Doing all right. I worked 5 hours today. Not too long of a shift. Otherwise, I'm doing pretty swell.
Good.
All right. So first things first. I'm gonna just ask you, where are you from? Like what, like city, country, state? Where would you say? Where are you from?
So I'm in the United States, and I was born in Renton, Washington, which I guess for those of you who aren't from around here, Seattle is probably the city that you'll recognize. Renton is about an hour, not an hour, sorry, maybe half an hour south of that. And
Okay.
currently, my wife and I live in a town called Rochester, which is,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's about 2 hours south of Seattle.
Okay. How long have you been married?
Um, this year is going to be 7 for us.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Oh, I hope I got that right. That's going to be under public.
Well, either way, congratulations, man. Happy for you.
Yeah.
So let's just cut right to the juicy stuff. When did you start modding? What year did you kind of get involved with either the Empire War community or in general? Like when did you kind of just start everything?
So I picked up modding basically straight out of high school. When I was in high school, I knew that I've always been interested in art. I've been drawing since the day I was born, basically. Um,
Mm.
and then when I discovered Photoshop, my dad brought home a copy of like Photoshop 5, and
Okay.
that's kind of where I figured out that I could take my art to the computer.
Yeah.
So I always knew I wanted to do something like that. And then in high school, I took a JavaScript and HTML class, and
Wow.
that's where things started to kind of come together. And I realized that there was so much more you could do. So I started looking at other people's projects, and that's about the time Empire at War came out, was
Okay.
my senior year. So just the timing of that and everything is when I started into the Empire at War modding community. It's actually the first game I had ever done any modifications for. So that's where it all started. That was what, like 10 or 11 years ago now.
So you say you graduated high school back when Empire War came out?
Yeah, I don't know if it was the exact same year. I don't
Mm.
recall when Empire War exactly came out, but I graduated in 2007.
Oh wow, dude. I think I was like that was what 12 years ago. I was only like 9 or 10 or something like that.
I'll be 30 in August, so I'm an old man in this community, I think.
If you want to talk about old, let's go talk to Strobe again because that man's up there.
Yeah, that's true. He's got me beat, that's for sure.
So did you start on so when you started getting involved with the Empire War community, did you kind of start like where a lot of people started, which was like at File Front, pretty much? You kind of just started discovering things there and just kind of wanted to branch out from there as time went on, or did you discover it a little like in a different area?
So originally, I can't even remember the name of the site now because it's been defunct for years.
Hmm.
But there was just a general mod site, kind of like ModDB, but it was way smaller in scale.
Okay.
And that's where I discovered my very first Empire at War mod.
Okay.
And from there, that's what piqued my interest. And it wasn't long after that I discovered FileFront, because at the time it was kind of the spot for Empire at War modders.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I picked it up. I mean, Xerox, his mod was basically at the top of the world at that time.
Oh yeah.
So goes without saying that I kind of studied his work, and I taught myself how to XML code, and I already knew the Photoshop end of it, but learning how to apply that to Empire at War specifically. Just
Hmm.
studied his mod for probably 6 months. And then
So if you compare your experiences like then till now, would you say the learning curve has been kind of drastic ever since then? Like when you first started learning how to do all of this, did it seem actually kind of difficult at first? Because I've kind of done a little self teaching with like XML coding, and I'm actually
mhm.
a CS major, so I know a little bit about coding. Yep. a lot of different languages. But would you say there was like a bit of a learning curve with XML, or did it just feel kind of right at home, like with everything else that you were doing?
Because I already knew HTML,
Yeah.
both from my high school class and a lot of my interest in art and programming and many things actually comes from my dad. He was doing web design at the time and stuff, so I was kind of watching over his shoulder. And anyway, HTML and XML, obviously, they're essentially the same thing, right?
Right. Right. Yep.
And some programmer's gonna hit me over the head for saying that, but it was really easy to jump from one to the other. So as far as that went, real simple. It was not until several years later that I started learning like Lua and stuff, so I could program the AI. That was a little bit more of a curve.
To this day, I've delved a little bit into Lua scripting, but to this day, I just like when I've seen some of the stuff that people could do with the scripting, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'll just stick to testing mods and just leave that part alone for the rest of my life. I'm perfectly okay with never touching that again.
Well, I will not claim to be a pro at that kind of stuff. I'm no CAD. I'll put it that way. Um, I've learned a lot from CAD. He's been a big part of
Oh
helping
yeah,
me to understand
CAD's
that
an
language
absolute
and stuff.
lunatic when it comes to coding.
Yeah, but it took me a little bit longer to get there. I took a JavaScript class the same time as that HTML class in high school, and I sort of studied it on my own a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, I have a good handle on it now, but at the time, um, it didn't come to me near as quick, and Lua is same kind of situation. I have to sit and stare at it for a minute, but
Yeah.
after a couple years of doing it, you kind of get the hang of it. So.
Right. You just get a little used to it after so long, and especially like when you've got a community like this one that kind of has a lot of people that are really familiar with it. There's a lot to learn from different people and kind of give you some ideas and such.
Yeah, I mean, without people like Cat or I mean, several people on the Vong team and others who have been in the community as
Mm.
long or nearly as long as I have, we all kind of build off of each other in some form or another, or teach each other, learn from each other. That's one of the reasons I've been in this community so long, because it's so collaborative and everybody, for the most part, is willing to work together. And well, we'll not say any names, but
We're here to keep it simple.
I think they may have been alluded to in your previous interview, but we'll leave it there.
What? I have no idea what you're talking about. What previous interview? But I completely understand what you're saying. So when you first really got to like file front, did you feel like there was like a sense of competition there, kind of? Because I feel like at that given instant, when file front really was the big dog website to be on for modding, there were so many people kind of like vying to kind of be at the top a little bit. I didn't, there were a lot of people that were collaborating, but would you say there was like a sense of like a competition at the time when you first kind of got there, or did it feel like everybody was working together? Or
so a lot of that like friendly collaboration really came into being after I transitioned over to ModDB.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely some of that in the file front days, and I think Bernstrope, when you interviewed him, he touched on the fact that he kind of saw my planet textures, and I remember there being some conversations there, and I remember him releasing his first textures on the site and everything when he was first starting out, not long after me. So there was some of it, but I learned really quick after releasing the very first version of Rise of the Mandalorians that there was definitely a culture on FileFront that was different than what I would come to know on ModDB.
Oh yeah.
There were a couple of people on that site that I don't think they're in the community anymore. I don't think they have been for some time, but they were very, full of themselves, I guess.
Overconfident or arrogant, would you say?
Yeah, and
Okay.
they ran their own modding sites, and those of us who have been around for a long time know what websites those are, but I'm not going to name them. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I think because of the fact that they ran their own networks and had all these people kind of congregating around them, sort of got to their heads a little bit.
Right.
So that wasn't so great, but once Filefront kind of went away, those people sort of left with it for the most part.
Hmm.
Uh, and the ModDB community is much better overall.
Oh, I 100% agree. I remember used to see different arguments over like the like 13,000 different Old Republic mods we had back in the day. I remember there being even a different owner before Geronimo took over it. There used to be an entirely different owner even for the very like first dedicated Old Republic at War mod. So I kind of remember there being a lot of different people there that were like kind of vying for power. There was a lot of arguments I would see on a regular basis when I would read through the forums.
Yeah,
But
there really were, and a couple of key individuals just weren't very nice, especially to young modders, and I encountered some of that myself. I remember when I posted the first version of Rise of the Mandalorians and posted my texture packs and particle effect packs that I was working on. I just put in there that if you use any assets from these, like, you're fine to use it, but just shoot me a message. I'd like to know who you are and where you're using it. And I basically got lambasted by this person and told that I was seeking validation and that asking people to inform me was unnecessary and juvenile.
hey,
And I was like,
please,
what?
sir, I'm gonna need you to not ask for copyright permissions when I use your shit, please.
Right, and it wasn't even so much giving them a release on my intellectual copyright. It was more just a standpoint of curiosity and just wanting to know uh, why they were interested in my work and what they were using it for. And I got raked over the coals for that, and I just remember like thinking that, man, that is not a healthy way to foster a community.
Oh yeah, not in the slightest. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of because for one, I mean, none of us own the rights to this game. We're just making a lot of this stuff for the fun of it, really. Secondly, for people to take it that serious, it's a little over the top. I mean, it's your stuff that you put the time and effort into making. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking, hey, just give me some credit or something. Like
Right.
you didn't make this, I did, and I'm not trying to tell you like I'm better than you or anything. It's just you're using my shit, so let me know you're using my stuff.
Yeah, that's all it was. I felt like it was a simple ask, but I guess some people disagree. That's their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back on modders like what was his name, Cheesecake, people
Mhm.
like him, people like you all shared a lot of assets that a lot of mods back in the day, uh, took advantage of because I mean it was great looking content.
Right.
That was right around that time, like you said, of the mod like DB like era when people actually were starting to share content with one another and it was a friendly environment. I wasn't on File Front for too long, but I did kind of like see the transition be a little bit more smoother in between both sites. And then left, right, and center, I just started seeing people just like, hey, you guys can use this, or hey, this is a free release. And then that was kind of like the same area where Warp Null started throwing out free content like once a week. So, yeah.
That madman.
Oh, yeah, that dude's nuts. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think like that transition from a toxic environment into a more healthy environment was like noticeable because Filefront, as much as I love that site, I found a lot of amazing things on that site. It was a hellhole as if you tried to have an ego or if you tried to put anything up there. Really, it was a pain in the ass, and I saw a lot of that over the years.
Yeah. I for a very brief period was releasing texture packs for Dawn of War Dark Crusade as well
Oh,
on File, and it was the same kind of thing over there too. And especially just kind of a tangent here, but especially in the 40K community, people get really passionate about their lore.
yeah.
So if your Ultramarines are the wrong shade of blue, you're going to hear about it from like, let me tell you. Um, Probably still some of that on ModDB, but I think people are a little bit more constructive with their criticism overall.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be bad actors, but it's just a better place.
And everybody's a little older too now. That was back in kind
That
of in
too.
the day. Yeah. Everybody's
Yeah.
matured just a tiny bit. Not everybody, but a good chunk of the community has.
Some of us try.
Right. So looking back, I'm not gonna kind of deviate to like some stuff about like Rise of the Mandalorian. When you released your very first version of it, was it a completely solo project or did you have some help with that?
So that is kind of the one thing about Rise of the Mandalorians that I've always tried to uh, keep in mind, and I don't want to say the word brand, but that's the best word I can think of,
Mm-hmm.
is that it has always been a solo project from day one.
Really?
Yes, over time, what is this, version 5 that I'm working on now that's going to be released soon. Um, that as each iteration has gone by, I have collaborated with people like
Mm-hmm.
the Yuzhan Vong at War Team. A good example currently of a team that I work with a lot. We bounce ideas off each other. Sometimes we share assets as well,
Mm-hmm.
but we're both uh, exclusive teams. They do their thing and I do mine.
Right.
We work together, but we're not working on each other's mods.
Right.
And
Right.
and in the past, I've gotten help from people like Corey and Code User and a lot of other people through the years, but none of them have ever been on any kind of a permanent team. It's always
Okay.
just been me doing the brunt of the work and then outsourcing or asking for a favor here and there if there was something that I didn't know how to do, or maybe I saw an asset in another mod that was uh, something that I didn't have the software to do, because it was a long time actually before I even um, shall we say acquired 3ds Max. Is that
Mm-hmm.
is that legal? Can I
Yeah.
say that?
We get what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, Autodesk, you need to sell old versions, please. I'd pay you.
Is it really that bad? I've heard a lot of bad talk about the newer versions of 3ds Max.
Well, okay, I won't speak to the quality of the new version, but anytime a new version is released, they take the old version off the market, and your previous plugins, they're not like backwards compatible or forwards compatible. So,
You have to
if you have a
reinstall them.
plugin like the Alamo exporter, it has to be used with that version X.
Oh.
Um, yeah. So, anyway, just saying, Autodesk, if you're listening.
This video is sponsored by Autodesk, by the way.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
my bad.
But, oh man, when did that first version come out? It came out in around 2010 or 11, didn't it? Or was it before that?
Yeah, I had previous, I guess, like alpha versions of the mod that never quite made it to public release. I think the first public version, yeah, it was about 2009 or 10. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but it was a while ago.
Do you actually still have any of those older versions?
I have them on CDs in a case somewhere in my closet. I think
CDs?
yes, sir.
Well, listen, I'm not even going to deny the fact that I would love to play one of your very first versions of Rise of the Mandalorian on my on my YouTube channel. That would be amazing.
For nostalgia's sake, I think you'll be underwhelmed. It's grown a lot since then.
Man, oh man, that was definitely a weird era. I remember when that mod first finally dropped its first public release. I remember playing that from day to night. There was I always couldn't get around the one weird crashing issue that happened with some of the bombers would come in sometimes. But other than that, I loved the hell out of that mod when it first came out.
Well, just rest assured that is already fixed in the new version. Just so you know.
That was going to be a question of mine. Has the crashing bug since 2010
Yes,
finally been fixed?
that's right. I take lessons from EA, and I will fix bugs eventually.
Give it about 10 more years and it'll be fixed.
Just kidding.
So,
No,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry.
So in comparison to your first version, and this is, forgive me if this is a stupid question, comparison to your first version to your current version, how much has realistically changed? And from art assets to code to just generally everything, has it just been completely 100% reworked, or is it like there are still some old things from the older versions kind of still in there?
It has been 100% reworked. Um, so version 4 is the version that's currently on ModDB and has
Mm.
been on there for years. That version, it has assets from other mods, and it has old code from the previous versions because it was built on top of those versions.
Mm.
That's why some of those, like the bomber bug kind of persisted. I was building it on top of the previous versions.
Mm-hmm.
When I sat down and decided I wanted to do a fifth version, because originally I said version 4 was going to be the last version.
Uh-huh. I
But
remember.
I had learned a lot doing my Halo mod and helping out other modders and just studying in my private time.
Are you
I
talking
wanted,
about not I'm sorry, not to cut you off. Are you talking about the Covenant of War mod?
no, not Covenant at War, Campaign Command.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man. I have to ask, are you still working on that? Or is that kind of a
I will continue work on that after Rise of the Mandalorians has been released. So those of you who are waiting, that's the definitive answer straight from the horse's mouth. It will be finished, but I want to get Rise of the Mandalorians done first.
well, that's exciting news. I'm gonna make sure to highlight that part of this video.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna edit the video to repeat that part at least 3 times in a row.
There you go.
But okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so back on the topic of Rise of the Mandalorians. So
Yeah. So when I decided I wanted to do version 5, I wanted it to be like a definitive edition that was a culmination of everything that I had learned and really set out to make the mod everything that I had wanted it to be
mhm.
way back when I started modding, but I either didn't have the knowledge or didn't have the software or didn't have the time because I was in college and all that kind of stuff.
I know that feeling.
And yeah, yep. I don't I miss college sometimes, and then I remember the homework and things like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm okay. Um, but anyway, so I completely blew away version 4. I got rid of it completely. In fact, I deleted the folders. I have them archived on a CD somewhere,
Hmm.
but I deleted them off my computer to force myself to start from scratch. And so from that point, I have
Hmm.
literally remade every single model, every single texture, every single sound effect, voiceover, piece of code, whether that be XML or Lua or custom shaders. And
That's impressive.
some of these things didn't even exist in version 4. I didn't know how to do shaders when I made version 4. That's one
Right,
of the
right,
new
right.
things I learned that I wanted to bring in. But all of that stuff has been completely rebuilt from scratch. You will not see any assets in version 5 that have existed in previous versions, period.
So wow. Okay, I have to admit, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was just a complete redo of the entire project altogether. I mean,
Yes.
like when I look at the art assets that you've made now, it's obvious like nothing's gonna be the same like how it was almost 10 years ago. But the fact that you actually just kind of threw the old version away and just started fresh, that's a milestone to achieve when you're basically running the whole thing by yourself.
Well, thank you. Yes, that's I get asked a lot, you know, when's the mod going to be released? When's the deadline? And
As
people who've been
always,
following
people
the
always
mod
do.
for a while know that I have given tentative release dates that have come and gone
Mm-hmm.
and are maybe several years old at this point. So, number one, thank you for being patient with me. But that is the reason why it has taken so long, is because I wanted to come in and not just add a bunch of units or whatever. I wanted to make an unofficial expansion pack, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so, not only have I added or used the Zon Consortium to make the Mandalorians into a new faction,
Mm-hmm.
but I've redone everything from like props on land and space maps and voiceovers for every unit that didn't already have them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've played the Expanding Front mod for Galactic Battlegrounds.
Okay, forgive me, and I know people are gonna criticize me for this, despite my large love for anything Star Wars related. But I've actually never played Galactic Battlegrounds.
All right.
I can actually admit that I've never played Galactic Battlegrounds, and I'm ashamed of it.
You've played Age of Empires 2, I assume.
I've dabbled in it.
Okay. It's a Star Wars game built on the same engine, so you just imagine Age of Empires with a Star Wars skin.
Right, yeah, I've actually seen some playthroughs of it, so I know the game like as far as like how you kind of play it and what it looks like. But yeah, I've actually never touched it myself.
So yeah, the point is anyway
Hmm.
that and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right because I've read it plenty of times, but I've never actually heard him pronounce it. But I believe it's Genris Dallos from that mod
Hmm.
has done a lot of voiceover work, as well as my wife and I have both done voiceover work as well. So every unit is going to have its own voice, um, which is something a lot of mods. And this isn't a knock on any of these mods. It's
Of
just
course.
an observation. But a lot of mods when they come out, you'll have three different frigates that all say Nebulon B reporting, and I didn't want that because for me personally, that is
Hmm.
a huge distraction. It just pulls you right out of the game,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
especially doing a conversion of an entire civilization from the Zon Consortium to the Mandalorians,
Right.
to have Zon Consortium voiceovers for Mandalorian units, especially the iconic ones that are like established in the lore and people have fallen in love with these characters.
Hmm.
They needed to um, be given the attention that they're due.
So you don't want all of your Mandalorians to say mercenary squad reporting? You're not a big
Yeah,
fan of
no,
that?
not so much. Or for the Zon Consortium, it's not going to work. Um, and I didn't want them all to have Boba Fett voiceovers either.
Right, right,
Much as I love Boba Fett, he can't be every Mandalorian. So
right, right. They don't all sound the same. I would presume. Like if you look at what was the name? Canderous, Canderous Ord. That was his name, right? From Knights of the Old Republic.
Canderous Ordo, yeah.
Canderous Ordo. Yeah, he had a completely different voiceover to like Jango Fett or Boba. So I mean,
Right, and that's one thing about the lore that people who like the Mandalorians are familiar with this and it's old news. But if you're new to the Mandalorians, they're not just humans either. The
mm-hmm.
Mandalorians, their culture and their warrior society is not. Um, Let me put it this way: they're not a species; they are a civilization, right? So
Right, right.
they're very diverse, and there's even I think it's in some of the Old Republic comics. There are like Rhodian Mandalorians with like customized Rhodian
Mm-hmm.
armor and things like that. And the way Empire at War works, it's difficult to get all of those species represented fairly.
Mm-hmm.
But I at least wanted to, they're not all going to be the same, have the same accent or what have you. So
Right, right. The Mandalorian, the title Mandalorian is more of a way of life versus being an actual like namesake for a given like type of or
yeah,
organism. That's the best word I can think of is organism, but
yes.
yeah.
Although to be fair,
Mm,
lore nerds, if you go back far enough in the history of the Star Wars galaxy, they were an actual species at one time.
mm-hmm.
To be technical and show my nerdism,
By all means, man. Tell me the truth.
but that species eventually perished, and the Mandalorian that we know just carry on their traditions. So
Yeah, because now I think about it, a lot of Mandalorian culture comes from a lot of other species. I mean, like their basilisk war droids. Those were designed by them. I'm pretty certain a large portion of their fleet designs didn't necessarily come directly from Mandalorian culture. It was all kind of quote unquote borrowed from other cultures in a sense. But
yeah, they would do that when they conquered a civilization or whatever. They would take the good parts of it and assimilate them into their own culture and their own technology, and then improve upon them.
right,
So, I mean, they had a lot of things that they innovated and invented themselves as well. But a big part of their rapid advancement in the Old Republic era was because they were so good at adapting foreign things.
right, right. So that makes me kind of wonder. So of all the like different mods you kind of could have designed, you could have went for it because you had things like the Clone Wars is still relatively new during the early 2000s or right around the 2010 era, and then you had things like the Yuzan Vong, the Republic, super big titles. So why Mandalorians? Like, what made you want to make a mod kind of built around Mandalorians?
Well, my favorite Star Wars character since I was a kid has been Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
I'm have a man crush on Boba Fett, I think. And even before I knew he was Mandalorian, I
Mm-hmm.
knew that the armor. I love his kind of badass attitude,
Yeah.
and he's just a cool guy. And then I started to figure out, what his origins were and what he was all about, and it opened up the door to learning about the Mandalorians as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of changed in one of the novels. They made mention that they wanted their culture to be kind of inspired by Celtic culture,
Mm-hmm.
but way back in the day, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of samurai influence in there as well.
Yeah.
And so that, all of those things together just kind of drew me to them because I like samurai culture. I like Celtic culture too, honestly. So
Yeah.
they're just a cool civilization, and I really appreciate the fact too that they are one of the few uh, groups in the Star Wars universe that can stand toe to toe with Force users and not
Mm-hmm.
use the Force.
Yep.
And I tend to root for the characters that are kind of the underdog like that, where I don't need uh, mystical powers to
Mm-hmm.
be feared or respected or whatever. I can do it based on my own skill.
Right, right. You have the proper combat prowess to kind of just handle yourself, no matter who really approaches you or not. Like,
Right.
not it makes me think of like the legacy of the Force, not comics, the novelizations. Jaina Solo, the better version of this Rey character that we hear so much about. Uh, well, yeah, I didn't say anything, but
Just
Jaina.
at you.
I'm gonna get copyright strikes for saying Rey.
Yeah.
But Jaina actually, if I don't know if you read the Legacy of the Force books.
I've read a great number of them, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I think the most interesting part about that was the fact that Jaina got trained by old man Boba
Mm-hmm.
in Jedi killing because I mean it makes sense. Force users know how to kill each other the Force user kind of way, and Mandalorians know how to murder basically anybody the Mandalorian way. So, but
Right.
yeah, that has always been such a good part to me. Like it
Yeah,
does.
that story is really fascinating, and
Mm,
I think it was Boba and Bevan were the two Mandalorians that trained her, and that interaction. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but that interaction is very cool. I agree.
mm. And it kind of makes me think back to on the topic of non-force users that can manhandle force users. It kind of makes me think back to the Old Republic Alderaan trailer that came out in about 2010 for Star Wars: The Old Republic,
Yes,
where
yes,
the Republic troopers were manhandling all the Sith like that were on Alderaan at the time. I think his name was Jason. One of them was like Jason or Merrick, or I can't remember what his name was, but he was the leader of his squad. He just like one of the Sith just approached him. He just grabs him by the waist and flips him over his back and keeps on running, like just manhandling all of them as he goes along. But
yes. I thoroughly enjoyed all of those cinematics. I haven't played the Old Republic, but I will just go back and watch the cinematics on YouTube every now and again because they're so well done.
oh yeah, I 100% agree. I wish they had more, and I kind of wish they had more of those timeline videos
Mm-hmm.
that just kind of like you could just kind of sit there. I've gotten in. I found like so many 48-minute videos on those timeline videos. I'll be doing homework and just listening to that in the background constantly because they're always narrated really well. This like the images are always really clean and clear, and they kind of fit the art style and stuff.
Yep, yep. I'll do the same thing if I'm at work or working on the mod or something. I'll use it for inspiration. And now, if Disney would just get their act together and make a decent Old Republic series, I think we could all be happy.
Or let Blur Studios keep on making these really beautiful trailers. At least if we can't get anything out of Disney, then we can put our faith into these cinematic trailers, I guess.
That's true. The Old Republic is the one area of the old expanded universe that Disney is kind of afraid to definitively shut down. So if
As
they
they
just
should
keep
be.
that relationship going so that they can keep making Old Republic lore and trailers, like, I'll be happy.
So, would you say like I'm gonna assume one of your favorite historical moments of the Star Wars universe is probably the Mandalorian Wars, right?
Yes, of course.
If you had to choose like a specific part of the Mandalorian Wars that you could say is your favorite, which part would it be?
Oh man. Um, I don't know if I can pick a specific part that without a doubt is my favorite. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, I love the story of the original two KOTOR games, and I know that those are technically after the Mandalorian Wars, but
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of that aftermath that I do sort of enjoy because it's more I guess in my mind it's more of a personal story. You
Uh,
know, the wars are like big in scope and and it's focused more on the overall combat. I mean, there are little characters too, but
mm-hmm.
that I hope I'm explaining this right, but
No, I totally understand what you're saying. Like the Old Republic era is kind of focused more on the actual aspects of war versus like the rebels and the Empire. You know, I mean, they had their little skirmishes here and there, but the Old Republic era is like the wars are on such a scale that reading them kind of just makes you a little giddy, especially like when you think about like the battles of Malachor Five or
Mhm.
the Battle of Telos. You hear everything, every single one of those like battles, and they kind of describe how it goes, and it just makes you want to know more about them. Like,
Yeah, but I guess for me, part of the joy of playing the KOTOR games is hearing about those things
mm,
after the fact,
yeah,
and so it's like this history that is kind of left up to your imagination for the most part. You know that there was a lot of devastation that was wrought upon the Mandalorians, and now they are just these battle-hardened people that are, uh, simple men making their way in the universe, kind of thing.
yeah,
And so it's each story is a little bit different, and how are they dealing with that defeat and that loss? How are they recovering? Are they recovering, or are they slipping into this life of just like being a thug or whatever? To me,
right,
that's much more interesting. That's part of the reason that I really like the story of Boba Fett becoming the Mandalore, because he, Goran Bevan even told him one time that you're no Mandalorian, you just wear the armor.
yeah,
And the fact that actual Mandalorians had that point of view towards him, it was kind of an uphill battle for him to assume that mantle
yeah,
and step into this life of step from being a bounty hunter to being more or less like a cultural leader. Very different things, and I don't think it came naturally to him, in my personal opinion. So
mm,
this story of his struggle or whatever, it's kind of what I wanted to explore with the mod because that stuff is just interesting to me.
okay. So, is that why kind of like when you start off? Oh, I remember this off of the older versions. I don't know if it'll be different in the future, but is that why like the Mandalorians kind of started off just a little bit small than the other factions? You don't really have the option of just being some overly dramatic military might. You have to kind of just build up and fight your way into controlling things and just taking over. Kind of is that like the kind of direction you were kind of go like trying to go with the Mandalorians or?
Yeah, I mean, to build like a full-on campaign that actually told this story in a traditional RTS way would be unimaginable in scope for a mod team, to make
Right, right.
cinematics and missions and everything. But I wanted to still kind of explore that story in whatever way I could.
Mm,
And so one way to do that is in, like Galactic Conquest, the Mandalorians overall have fewer options than the other factions just because there was less available to them.
mm,
And it seems like it's a little bit imbalanced when you look at it on the surface,
it is.
but it's more what you do with those things as opposed to, I kind of hate strategy games where every faction has the same stuff and it's kind of cookie
Mm,
cutter, like, each faction has its version of a tank destroyer, each faction has its version of anti-air, has its version of this and that. Sometimes, maybe in the position the Mandalorians were in, they have the resources or access to X and Y technology. So what are you gonna do to overcome that?
right, right.
Victory is still there. There's still a road to it, but you have to discover that. can actually use your brain.
Right, right, right. And especially if you've got a power like the Mandalorians, like you said, they might not have had the technology kind of available to them at the given instant, so they just kind of they're kind of like a rebel alliance in the sense, minus that the Empire isn't hunting them. You know, they're just kind of got to stick it out with what you got and figure out what you're going to do from there.
Yeah, they're kind of ragtag, and they become less so over time, and then on into like the Second Imperium and stuff far in the future of Star Wars. You know, they're much more well established, but
Mm,
this area sort of immediately Return of the Jedi up until the Yuzan Vong invasion, you know, they're still figuring things out, and
yep.
a civilization that is kind of in its infancy like that, or just barely starting to take the first steps to truly recover from the destruction that they faced, you know, 2,000 years prior, they're not going to have a lot at their disposal.
Right, right.
They just have to use what they've got effectively. And that, to me, just speaks to who the Mandalorians are as people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'm glad you got your insight on that. It's not just kind of like a fan, like, yeah, I think the Mandalorians are cool. It's kind of like it's nice to know that you have some really deep like insight behind your motives on building this mod, and again, it not just being, I saw them in a movie once and they look kind of cool, so just gonna go from there. Because from what I'm hearing, you know, you have a deep passion. You sound like you study the culture of them pretty well. You study the battles. You study like what you can, what's available, you know, to the public about the Mandalorians. And I feel like we have passion like that behind a mod. It really turns more of something. It becomes more than just a project. It really becomes personal because you actually have like a deep, deep like interest in the people that the cultures that you're kind of like trying to introduce into the game. And especially when you've got a game like Star Wars Empire War, it'd be different. Maybe it was like a first-person shooter or something.
Right.
But you're really like doing your best to kind of show like this is what the Mandalorians truly are, and not some sub faction that you know some other mods will just kind of make them out to be that suddenly have like the biggest fleet in the galaxy, or you know something kind of just a little absurd. You know,
Right.
you're trying to like express them how they're supposed to be, kind of, and then you know allow a little build up from there as the player.
Right. And it is, you know, in late game, you probably will be more on par with the other factions, and you do have to, you know, give a little for the sake of gameplay. You can't go 100% lore at the expense of gameplay, and then nobody's going to have any fun. So you do have to find a balance.
Right.
But Star Wars, it is something that's very personal to me. You know, kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that. You know, it's and this is true of a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just speaking for myself, but I have a lot of great memories around Star Wars with my dad and some of my childhood friends. You know, it's very nostalgic and it's very important. And I want to. I mean, I guess at the risk of sounding really sappy and making a few people throw up in their mouth a little bit, uh, Rise of the Mandalorians is kind of like my love letter to Star Wars, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's something that I have been passionately creating for over a decade, and I mean it's been a central part of my life for years and years. And the mod's getting close to being released, so it's an exciting time for me, but I'm almost going to be sad when it's done. It'll be like I imagine how like a parent feels when one of their kids goes off to college or gets married or something. Like,
Right. Right.
you know, because I mean the mod is really that important to me. It's that personal, and that's kind of again another reason why I've taken so long to produce it. Is not just because I'm working on it, you know, in a team of one and wanting to do all these different things, but
Mm-hmm.
also just because I want to make sure that I get it right.
Right. You want to give like a really good product that people are going to see. Like you put your heart and your soul into this, and it wasn't just you know kind of
Yeah,
done shoddy.
right. And I originally I had a goal to release last December because I wanted to do mod of the year and all that kind of stuff. And I just
Mm-hmm.
had this thought, you know, it's really not about that. I mean, sure, I would love to win mod of the year and have the accolades and stuff. That would be like a great, I guess, way to celebrate the release of the mod and really just the cherry on top. But the mod's a lot more than that, and so I just decided that I'm not going to sacrifice that mission and those
Mm-hmm.
things that are personal to me, just to, you know, get an award on a website, for lack of a better term. It's to me, it's more important than that.
No, I totally understand. I mean, like you said, this is more than just a hobby for you or just something for like a fun like little thing. This is like a part of your. We're gonna go into the really sappy area. This is a part of your heart and like soul, kind of.
It it truly is. It truly is. And because of that, it takes up large portions of my time, and my wife will tell you that. um, but it's in a lot of ways like a kid that I've raised the last 10 or 11, 12 years. And so when I do put it out there for people to play and experience, I hope it's everything that I think it is. But we'll see. But if nothing else, I'm doing it for me. It's something that
Mm-hmm.
I started, and I have to see it through, and I'm making it uh, because I need to, not
Yeah.
because I want to, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Yeah, we don't have anything kind of really like this out there, and yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So there you go. You can all put your bark bags away now. I'm done with this.
Well, in that case, then let's maybe I'll just ask some lesser sappy questions. Um, so one of the most unique things about Rise of the Mandalorian, and I'm pretty certain I'm not the only one who believes this, is the art style. I think it's personally fantastic. It kind of gives me like a bit of a Borderlands kind of feel, not in terms of like design choices, but well, yeah, in terms of design choices and like coloration. Things have like like how Borderlands kind of has like darker outlines on some of their art assets. Like objects kind of stand out more.
Right.
What made you go with that design? I think it's beautiful. I'm just curious, like what made you go in that direction?
So I get that a lot, and specifically the comparison to Borderlands is that's a comparison that I've heard from many, many people over the
Mm-hmm.
course of the last several years. And I won't say that I was inspired by Borderlands. I've actually never, but I love the art of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge comic reader, admittedly. I mean, I've read some, and I don't have anything against them. I actually enjoy them. I just, for whatever reason, I just haven't read a lot of them. But I love the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I'm in a comic store, I'll flip through and just look at the drawings and the colorization. And there's a lot of really unique and interesting art styles that go in there. And
Yeah.
so when I started making the artwork for Rise of the Mandalorians and establishing uh, a style that I wanted to stick with, I think both consciously and subconsciously that was a huge influence. And people have pointed that out before too. I don't know if that will necessarily come as a surprise because people have made that observation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there was also a technical aspect to it.
Okay.
Um, Empire at War, Bernstro pointed this out in the interview you did with him, that
Mm-hmm.
it can actually support fairly high poly objects,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, but a lot of the shaders and how it renders on the screen, your options as far as your materials and stuff go,
Yeah.
are they're limited just because it's an old game,
Right.
and so you have to kind of get uh, creative sometimes to make an object look just how you want. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, this particular art style is kind of the happy medium where you're taking the graphics engine of this game to a new level that
Yeah.
looks better than it did when it was released, but you're not um, like for example, you can't use 4K textures. Uh, it's my understanding that the game will not even render them. It compresses them down to 2K.
Okay.
Um, Other modders can correct me if I'm wrong, but things like that where you might have a vision in your head of all the details and things you want to get in there and
Mm-hmm.
a certain way you want it to look, but you're just going to be kneecapped by those limitations at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so to me, knowing that I had to work in textures that were lower resolution than I would have liked, uh, you have to you have to kind of cherry pick the details that you
Mm-hmm.
do and don't want.
Yeah.
Because when you scale it down to 2K, a lot of those really fine details that you work in there, that kind of get lost.
Okay.
And that's not to say that they're not worth adding, because sometimes, even though you may not see that little detail crisply, it will leave sort of the hint that it's there,
Yeah.
and that kind of illusion can be powerful too. Um, but you just have to be selective, and so having those hard panel lines and sort of more free-handed scratches on the metal and dirt
Mm-hmm.
maps and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it look comic booky, but it also fits into this little niche there in between, detail that's too high for the game to handle, but detail that's like not enough to be the quality that you might want it to be.
Yeah.
So it's just that happy spot in the middle. And that,
Well,
that happy little world is Bob Ross might say.
there are no accidents. Is there only beautiful mistakes or something he would say? I guess.
That's right.
you, so, would you refer to any of the starships you've like put textures on as pretty little starships, or?
That's right. Pretty little starships in their own happy little world.
While shooting, while trying to murder people.
If there's ever a lost episode that surfaces of Bob Ross painting Space Battle, I might just buy that painting.
It'll be the greatest. It'll be the most peaceful but tragic painting of all time, probably.
Yeah, right. What was going through this man's head? Peaceful nature scenes, destructive space battle.
Fires across the galaxy.
Yeah, right.
Well, so we are hitting a 52-minute mark. Actually, I didn't. It doesn't feel like 52 minutes have already gone by with this
No, it doesn't.
process. Yeah. So I think I want to start asking just a few more questions about Rise of the Mandalorians itself.
All right.
I don't know what the words that just came out of my mouth were, but I just want to ask a few more questions about Rise of the Mandalorian. And again, if you don't feel comfortable answering any of these questions, be my guest to tell me. So, of everything from every single art asset to every single line of code, and this is a big question, what are you most proud of out of this entire mod?
Man, that is a big question. There's so much that's gone into it. I guess number one is just the fact that I've done it all myself.
Okay.
People who know me know that, yes, I love art, but I went to art school for a reason, because I'm terrible at mathematics.
As we all are.
Yeah. So things like programming, they don't necessarily come natural to me.
Mm-hmm.
The art half does. That comes natural to me, and I enjoy it, and it just flows. So I'm proud of the work that I've done in that regard, because I do think that the work for the mod has been some of my best artistic work.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to pick the thing I was the most proud of, it would probably be learning how to modify and write shader code.
Shader code?
Yeah, so I guess to break it down for people who may not be familiar,
Mm-hmm.
The shaders in your game are, I'm trying to think how to explain it simply. So those files, those shader files, basically they tell the graphics card how to display the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the lighting, the shadows, the colors, the sharpness or blurriness of the textures, and just all kinds of things. It's a big thing to try and unpack in an interview like this, but
Mm-hmm.
those are written in code, right? You open it up in Notepad or whatever, and it's just lines of code.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I honestly, before, like maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I didn't really know that either. I had built shaders in things like the Unreal Engine,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously in my 3D programs, 3ds Max and Maya is actually what I use primarily.
Mm-hmm.
um, there's a tool in Maya called the Hypershade, which is a shader builder, and you're just building it visually with like nodes and connecting these different nodes and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, which is similar to the Unreal Engine. And that's what I thought shaders were. I mean, I knew that there must be some underlying code, but I didn't realize, that these files in Empire at War, these shader files in Empire at War, I didn't realize that they were just opening a code document.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was new to me. But I was really happy when I discovered that, because that meant that I didn't need some special software to edit these or to make my own. I just
Right.
needed to know how to understand that code. And so I worked with a little bit with CAD and a little bit with a gentleman named Gockler.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming Gockler is a gentleman. Actually, if you're a lady, I apologize. I just made an assumption there. An
Gotta relax on the
fellow modder.
microaggressions, man.
Yeah, I gotta check myself. I worked with that Gockler, who knows, or at least seems to know shaders real well, and
Mm-hmm.
has been a tremendous help, kind of teaching me or helping me to learn shader code. And then I just found online tutorials and stuff as well, how to write C++ and other languages that play into that, and learning different nuances of shader code.
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually was able to modify some of the base game shaders and write a couple of new ones as well that, not a lot of Empire War modders mess with shaders.
Yeah.
And I think the shaders that I've written, you're not going to see them in any other mod. And to me, that is cool in and of itself, but just knowing that I learned that, I didn't go to school for it. I'm not particularly strong in computer programming, but I used the resources at my disposal and learned how to do it, and it works. And so that's definitely something that I'm proud of.
Well, I gotta admit, man, like when I do see the shader like detailing that you've done on some of your ships, like I'm always amazed, because I mean it's always nice when people go over the top and make a really high quality texture or shader for their Star Destroyer or whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really thoroughly just enjoy the uniqueness that you've applied to your ships when it comes to your shaders and your textures. It's always stood out, in my opinion, above every mod. Like, I could care less if the game mechanics are just the worst in the history of the game. I will play for the art assets.
I've done my best to make the mechanics unique. Because programming is not my forte, I haven't completely turned the game on its head like the Vong team is. They're doing some crazy stuff because
I know.
They have good. Yeah, I know you know. They're doing good stuff because they've got really strong programmers on their team. I don't have that, since I'm just doing it myself, so I can't claim to be, essentially making a new game in this engine. But I've done some stuff with the AI and a few other tweaks, and I do have plans for Galactic Conquest when that comes out. This initial release is going to be skirmish only, space and land skirmish.
Oh, you hear that, everybody? We're getting a land skirmish from a mod for once.
Yes.
Round of applause.
Ground battles are something that suffered in this game, and I have put a lot of work into trying to make them great again.
Mm-hmm.
And I have confidence in it. We'll see what the players say when they play the mod, but I think you're gonna like it.
That gives me a good meme in my head. Make ground battles great again. I look forward to it, though. I mean, like I said, you don't hear too much about ground overhauls. I mean, there are a couple that are doing it, but it's always nice to hear. Yeah, I'm not only just making this I'm not gonna make this mod just look pretty in space. You're gonna have some pretty ground battles too.
Well, let's face it, man. If I didn't do ground battles, we would have a Mandalorian mod with no Mandalorian armor in it, and
that's very true.
Would just be unacceptable. So ground battles had to be paid attention to.
So of all the factions that are going to be in Rise of the Mandalorians, would you say the Mandalorians are going to be the strongest ground wise? Probably.
So I was saying earlier, I don't necessarily cookie cutters and they all have the same types of units.
Right, right, right.
So, having said that, each faction has its strength, each faction has its weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I think if played right, the Mandalorians are definitely a kick-ass faction that they have a counter for everything. They're not quite as straightforward and conventional as some of the other factions. They don't have designated. Uh, you're the AA, you're the anti-infantry, you're the this, you're the that. Some
Right,
things
right.
are multi-role, some things are specialized. But once you kind of learn how they work, especially like the Basilisk War Droid goes without saying is gonna wreck house.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's a
I
unit to
believe
be
you.
feared. But at the same time, because they have a more limited unit roster, and because some of their units, like the Basilisk, are kind of pricey, um, you can fail with them. They're not like a hacker faction.
Yeah.
But if you play them right, I would say that they're probably the most powerful.
And I can believe that. I mean, this is going to sound really nerdy, but you never want to underestimate a Mandalorian.
Right. One more note I will add, though,
Mm-hmm.
is that they do not have the most powerful ground unit in the game.
And what would
That
that be?
that title is solely reserved for the AT-AT.
Oh, so the AT-AT is confirmed the most powerful
Yes,
unit in general in the game,
it's
or?
not invincible,
Mm-hmm.
but the AT-AT in Star Wars lore is one of the most powerful, units that's been constructed. It's got extreme armor, extreme firepower. It can be deployed in all kinds of battlefields. And it's such an iconic vehicle.
Yeah.
It needs to be intimidating, no matter what it's going up against. It can't feel like it's made of paper, or it's just another unit to be dealt with.
So in this case, how many T-47s would it take to take down an AT-AT?
Well, one, if the tow cable works, but I have reduced the likelihood that will happen because snow speeder spam in the original game was not fun.
I agree.
So the T-47s have been tweaked a bit, and their primary ability is actually going to be like an engine boost, kind of
Okay.
like how they are in the Battlefront games.
Uh huh.
So the tow cable is usable, but it's not going to work as often. You're going to have to actually use some strategy to take down AT-ATs. Maybe that strategy can just be unit spam. That
Mm-hmm.
definitely works. I'm not a unit spammer myself. I like to be more creative, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not just as straightforward as send in a couple speeders and use the ability.
Right. It follows the philosophy of how you say you don't like real direct, like cookie cutter kind of concepts, like where if you get an AT-AT, just get a snow speeder or two, and no
Right.
problem right after that.
Right. Like, for example, I'll just give a sneak peek. One of the custom Mandalorians that this is a character that was concepted and sort of dreamt up by my wife. And
Shout out to the wife.
yeah, shout out to the wife. And the Mandalorian's name is Sean Mar,
Mm-hmm.
and she is kind of a computer whiz tech gearhead sort of Mandalorian.
Right. Right.
And so she's unconventional in the sense that she has no offensive weapon. Especially for a Mandalorian, I know that's going to take some people by surprise.
Yeah, it took me by surprise.
But she comes paired with a Strill, which is the six-legged Mandalorian dog, for those of you who may not know.
I'm actually about to pull one of those up right now.
And
Go ahead
they
and.
work. What was that?
I was going to say, go ahead and keep talking about to pull this up.
Okay. The Strill comes as a pair with Sean Mar. The two of them deploy together, but it's not like Han Solo and Chewbacca where they're each a different unit. They are in the same container, so if you click on one of them, you'll select both of them. And they move together, they stick together,
Yeah.
Stoker is the name of the Strill, and he's the loyal warhound. He's going to stay by her side. So how they work? She's anti-vehicle, he's anti-infantry. So if troopers get too close, Stoker is going to run out and maul those guys, and he's pretty vicious. He can take out a squad of regular troopers, pretty quick. He'll attack heroes as well. Not quite as effective against those.
Right. Plot armor.
Yes. But Shan Mar herself, all she brings to the battlefield, besides her war dog, is a data pad. And she will hack into enemy vehicles and disable them. So it stops their movement, it stops their weaponry, they can't use abilities, they're dead in their tracks. Now, she can only target one vehicle at a time. I didn't want it to be completely overpowered, but that vehicle, whether it's an AT-AT or an AT-PT, she's going to stop it dead in its tracks.
So is it a... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And so that gives you the opportunity to call in another unit to take it out while it's disabled. Or, conversely, she has an ability that will allow her to actually override enemy vehicle systems and convert them for a short time. So she herself is not the weapon. It's the things around her that she can bend, so to speak. And then her and her dog also have like an active camouflage. So if things get too untenable, she can cloak and they can make a getaway until they're able to get reinforced or what have you. So.
And you say you were afraid of making her overpowered because she sounds pretty damn good.
No, don't get me wrong. Like, Force users can still see through the cloak, which is a mechanic from the original game, but I left it intact because, the Jedi have to be able to combat her somehow.
Right.
But she doesn't have an overabundance of health, and her and the dog, they actually share an HP bar. They each have their own HP, but the damage is dealt like equally between them. So if you kill her, the dog's dead too, and vice versa. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I've dealt with one cloaked unit, now I have to go hunt down the other. It's like once you get one, you got them both. So I've worked in little things like that to keep it kind of balanced, but I just thought that mechanic of a unit that didn't just come in guns blazing, but actually had a different kind of take or approach like that, I thought that was interesting. And she's actually, this is my personal opinion, and I'm probably biased, but I think she's actually really fun to play with because she's so different.
Yeah, because I've never heard of them. I've never actually didn't know there was a... Well, were there any base game heroes that could just stop vehicles cold in their tracks? I think it might have been Default Han.
So Han and Chewie had like an EMP that they could do. That was an area of effect explosion that stopped vehicles for a short time, within a certain blast radius. As far as having it as like their default attack, I don't think there were any units like that. I think the Rebels' orbital bombardment did that, but again, that's more of an area of effect type thing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of components about her, and just the way that she's meant to be played are very unique.
Yeah, and I look forward to personally playing with her. Maybe I'll just make that the main I play with, I guess. But the one thing I look forward to is a dog animation. Have you actually animated the dog yet, or is it going to follow kind of like the Vorkshner from Myrkur?
So the wolf, Vorkshner wolf, however you pronounce that, kind of a mouthful. That was actually the base I started with when I was making the model, because it's one thing to do infantry, which are, bipedal, human-like.
Oh, yeah.
The dog was a little bit of a challenge, especially because it has 6 legs instead of 4.
I bet, yeah.
And I encountered a road bump, actually, while I was working on it, and discovered that if you put too many bones in the skeleton of this critter to try and animate it, when you export it to use in the game, it'll break and the whole model goes bonkers. So this is one of those collaboration moments where I actually reached out to some other modders and had to get that one solved. And figured out that you had to reduce the number of bones or split the mesh up in certain ways. But it did all work out in the end, so now you have a fully animated Strill in the game. And everything articulates, so he's got joints in all of his legs, he's got joints in his neck, his tail wags, and his mouth opens, too, so that he can actually bite people. That's part of his attack animation, so... it was a complex unit and had some unique challenges, but I think people will like what they see. I think it turned out pretty good.
You just got to make sure whenever you select the unit, press C on your keyboard so you can actually get a closer look and see all the animations working properly and whatnot.
Right. Use that cinematic mode.
Right. So
it is one thing about the original game that is it's one of the best features of the original game is that cinematic mode.
Oh yeah, it makes making trailers a hell of a lot easier too. Like when you're making trailers for like mods and stuff, yeah. So yeah. One thing, so I am gonna kind of start wrapping things up just a tad bit because we're actually hitting an hour and 11-minute mark now.
All right.
Just a few final questions and a couple of thoughts here and there, and then we'll probably just call it after that. So with Rise of the Mandalorians, is it? I noticed that the era of it is kind of in that, like right after the Warlords have been kind of reunited era after Dala. What kind of made you choose that era?
It's an era that's not explored very often. It's in that era, right there where the Imperial Remnant is kind of consolidating back into one cohesive. All the splinter factions are either joining together or being annihilated. And the Shadow Academy specifically is sort of the angle I took for the Remnant is those characters and that time frame. It's something that a lot of Star Wars fans don't really like to explore because it's the whole young Jedi Knights thing, made for kids, whatever.
To me, Star Wars has always been about just the general connection between the different stories. I can't help with the writers writing as childish. As long as the story kind of makes sense, it's enjoyable in my opinion. But,
yeah, I agree. And there are some interesting stories and characters to be found in that series. And it is where Lobaka, I believe, and Tenel-Ka, and all of these other characters that would become more significant in the New Jedi Order era. That's kind of where they got their start.
Oh yeah.
And so the material might be juvenile to some people, or just not interesting to them. But I think there are still interesting stories and characters to be found there. But because most people ignore it, there's a lot left to appreciate. It's not overdone. You don't have 200 Shadow Academy mods versus all the various mods that are out there. So.
Right. Honestly, the less public something becomes, the better it is, really. That's kind of like why you get unique mods like this or use on Long Air War or something. Like people are afraid to kind of delve into the areas like this. But when you have smaller communities for these ideas, it just makes building them a lot easier because you don't really have to compete with anybody for a better position or be accused of stealing ideas because 99% of the time you're going to be making the content up yourself. So yeah.
Yep, that's hitting the nail on the head. All of those different things I've thought of, and not to diss on Clone Wars. If you like Clone Wars, that's great. I grew up with the original trilogy, and so this is more my speed.
There are too many Clone Wars mods out there. Stop, people. Please. I beg of you. Just unite under one banner. Please.
As long as you said it. I'm not complaining. Man.
Hey, man. It's my channel, okay?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so what else? So one last thing I'm going to ask. They're my favorite faction in the Star Wars universe. Well, I'll ask that question after. as far as the future Rise of Mandalorian goes, like I said, you don't have to answer this entirely. What all would you say is kind of left that you have to do?
So for this current version that's coming up, I am
Mm-hmm.
finishing the buildings for the ground bases of the factions.
Mm-hmm.
I have spent all day up until the minute that I started this interview working on the command center for the Imperial Remnant.
Mm-hmm.
All the Mandalorian buildings are done. I mean, that's it. All the units and abilities and props and all that kind of stuff. That's all finished. Once these buildings are done, I'll release the skirmish version. So I don't want to give an exact date, but we're like right on the threshold of release. So
Okay.
getting there.
Okay.
Once that's I'm going to spend, I'm estimating maybe the next year putting together a Galactic Conquest campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to do one because I don't personally see a need to do more than one. There's one story to be told. And if you want, different maps that have fewer or more planets or whatever, you can go back and play one of the original maps from the base game, and everything should work on it still.
Right.
Just not a need to make more than one. So that's kind of where I'm at with what's left and what the future of Rise of the Mandalorians will be. After Galactic Conquest is done, I will address any bugs or balancing issues that get brought up by the community.
Mm-hmm.
But I will call it at that point. Rise of the Mandalorians has been a part of my life for over a decade, and I will be sad to see it go. But it's time to open a new chapter.
As and forgive me for quoting this because I know how we all feel about that movie. As Luke would say in Episode 8, it's time for the Mandalorians to end, pretty much. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If y'all in sub for me, I completely understand.
uh, yeah, I mean, not end.
Mm.
No one's ever really gone. But it just it's time for me personally to move on to other projects, and I will work on my Halo project, so I'll still be in the Empire at War community.
Mm.
But I would like to explore modding other games, like Company of Heroes is one that I would love to get into. Um, but just also other projects. I think I have an interest in music and other forms of traditional art and stuff, and I'd like to maybe explore those things and see what kind of talent I may or may not have
Mm.
in those areas. Teach myself some new skills that maybe don't involve sitting at the computer for hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand that. That's why I kind of I'm in the same boat. That's why I kind of started doing a lot of YouTubing and streaming more. I kind of wanted to branch out and see if I could actually do this and turn it into something a little unique. So yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. In other words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so two last major questions, and then I'm going to ask you one personal question right quick.
Okay.
Um, so was it your choice to kind of just stay alone and work on this? Did you not really want the influence of others to be like what's defining this? Is it because it's like this is your dream and you want it to kind of stay your dream, pretty much?
Um. Yes and no. As far as it being my choice to work alone, yes, that's entirely my choice. I've
Okay.
had plenty of people offer to help, and I have tried to let them down as gently as I could.
Mm.
Because there are some people that are very passionate about the mod and would love to be a part of it, and I'm grateful every time that help gets offered. But I've worked on it by myself for so long that I want to see it to the end that way.
Okay.
And it's just been such a big personal part of who I am for the last 10 or 11 years. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it was kind of a point of uh, personal accomplishment. I wanted to know that I could do it,
Right. Right.
and I wanted to be able to use the work in my portfolio, which, if other people were involved, then uh, there might be issues of who gets credit for what, and can I use it in a portfolio. Um, I've also I've had work stolen in the past, which kind of puts you off to working with people. Not that I'm embittered towards anybody, I've let go, but you just kind of get used to doing it on your own. And then there is that aspect of I have a vision in my head, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's face it, nobody likes group projects in school,
That's
right?
very true.
Um, and I didn't want my mod and this passion project, this, as I said earlier, this love letter to Star Wars, I didn't want it to become that. I wanted it to be something that every time I worked on it, it gave me satisfaction and joy,
Mm-hmm.
and I could feel passionate about it. That's not to say that there aren't days where the work gets frustrating, because there certainly are, but um, I didn't want it to turn into something where I was resenting having to do it.
I completely understand. I mean, you know, you can't really turn something you love into a real job, otherwise you kind of start hating it. Keeping a hobby as a hobby is always the best option.
Right.
That's kind of yeah, I understand that. That's kind of why I'm switching out of coding. It used to be a hobby, and now I hate it that I'm trying to turn it into a career. So I 100% understand what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
and then again, that concept of kind of you just kind of get used to doing things your way. You don't have to worry about arguments. You don't have to worry about disagreeing opinions. You know, you kind of just stick to how you want to do it. And if you don't like something, you don't have to argue with somebody about changing it. Kind of.
Right.
Unless it's that one person on ModDB who's always in your comment section saying, "Well, I think you should do this anyway." But other than that, you know, you don't really have much to worry about. I mean, it's your
Well,
project, and
I enjoy a good debate, and if somebody has good points, I'm open to it. But I'm also usually pretty good about presenting my own arguments too, and I think most people are satisfied with my answers. And if they're not, then too bad. That's my motto.
that's the attitude to have in this community. Especially if you're from the file front days, you need to have
Hey,
that attitude at
that's
this
right.
point. Okay. So my last question in regards to Rise of the Mandalorians is not a release date question, not a release date question whatsoever.
Hmm.
But if you could go back and say change anything about the mod that you like have decided to keep in it now, is there anything that you would change, or is you could kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Um, I'm pretty happy where the mod is currently. Um, like I said, that's one of the advantages of working on my own
Mm-hmm.
and not working with the objective of feeling like I need to get it out for mod of the year or any arbitrary deadline. Is I have time to go back and refine things that I don't like or remove them entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really have the luxury of making the mod what I want it to be and something that I am proud of, from the smallest prop to the most complex, iteration of the Star Destroyer. Every piece of the mod is something that I have created, and I've, when I was done with it, I sat back and I looked at it and I said, "Yep, I'm gets my stamp of approval. I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it, and it's going in." And if I couldn't give it that stamp of approval, then it just never made it into the mod. So looking at the mod as it is now, I don't think there's anything that I would change.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and like I said, like me and a million other people, I look forward to killing things in it. It's gonna be great. Killing things with the Borderlands 2 art style, I'm ready whenever. Just let me know when this releases so I can start a YouTube series on
Soon,
it and sell out.
soon, it's coming soon.
Soon, yes, of course. As always, I'm gonna put that at the end of the video.
Yes,
Um,
I mean that more literally than sarcastically. We're getting dangerously close.
soon.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we wrap things up, last personal question:
All right.
do you have a pet?
I currently do not. No.
Really?
Yes. My wife and I, we lived in an apartment for the first 5 years of our marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and the apartment complex had a lot of limitations on the type of animals that you could have,
Mm-hmm.
and the pet deposit was ridiculously expensive, so we just opted not to have one. We almost exactly a year ago bought our first house, so we've been enjoying that for a year, but um, there's a lot that goes into that, obviously, and so we have been kind of just settling in and making our home what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we do want to get a dog at some point. Both of us love German Shepherds. I personally, I love labs and Ridgebacks. And when I was a kid, we had a dog, like a Collie German Shepherd Wolf
Mm-hmm.
mix, which was a beautiful dog, you know. So, but we'll probably land on German Shepherd favorite, and I'm okay with that. So that's in our future, but not yet.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure to Photoshop or just cut a random German Shepherd into the video at some point or another. Upon asking this question, I'll just add somebody else's picture of their German Shepherd, and so people get the idea.
All right.
All right. Well, I just thought of a question I meant to ask way earlier, so answer this as fast as you prefer to. Um, so as far as like the Mandalorian ship roster goes, I know a lot of people have a big hard on for reusing some of the Old Republic Mandalorian ships like consistently. It's the same unit roster every single time. Is there anything unique that you're putting in there that has never been in another mod before?
Yes, there are some units in the Mandalorian roster, and I think in the rosters of the other two factions too, since we're on the subject, that are completely unique.
Okay.
Some things are inspired by Old Republic. If you've been following Mod on ModDB, seen pictures of the Protector class frigate,
Mm-hmm.
which is inspired by some Old Republic looks, but the story is that it's a new ship that is derived from old blueprints.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's not. I think it's called the Kraymud battleship, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to pronounce it. I'm probably butchering it, but
I know what ship you're talking about. Yeah.
it's based. It's not exactly that ship. And then there are some other ships that are totally new. So I'm not recycling assets from the Old Republic. To me, that would have been a disservice to the Mandalorians as they were in Boba Fett's time. It would have shown that they hadn't progressed at all.
Right.
That
Right.
they were still stuck on all this technology that was 2,000 years old. And Mandalorians are resourceful and innovative people, and they needed something fresh. So,
Well, like I said, I look forward to seeing all of this insane new content. I'm not saying that in a sarcastic tone. I hope it doesn't sound like that. I truly can't wait to see like what the uh, end game comes out to be. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I know about 1,000 or more people, a few thousand people are looking forward to it. So all I can say is I just can't wait soon.
yep, very soon, and I can't wait to get it out there. I've been working on it so long. I'm as anxious as the community to see it released, and I just want to hear y'all feedback, and I hope it brings a lot of hours of enjoyable gameplay. That's what matters to me. So
Rise of the Mandalorian YouTube series coming soon, I promise.
cool.
But all right, well, Farseer, do you have any other final remarks for the interview or anything in general that you want to say to the community?
I mean, I guess I would just like to express my gratitude to people who have followed the mod since the Filefront days. You know, the ModDB community is, I mean, some of my greatest friends I've met on there, and back on Filefront as well. And you get to be, I'm almost 30 years old, and you get to be that age, and you don't hang out with friends like you did in high school and stuff. And so ModDB is I mean, I think of you guys as my friends, and it means a lot that you've all stuck with me over the years, even when I promised release dates that were less than accurate, shall we say.
Right, right.
But sticking with the mod in spite of that, and being patient as I on my own to get all this done, that means the world to me. So I can't thank you guys enough.
And we thank you, man. Thank you for bringing all the content that you've brought to the community. And we, like I said, we continue to look forward to what you're going to bring to us in the future, man. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, all of your dedication, and all of your love for us and Star Wars.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it.
No problem. I really do appreciate you for coming on to this interview today. I know it's been a long one. We're about almost an hour and a half into this. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking just this little chunk of time out of your day to talk to me for an hour and a half for about Mandalorians, because that topic never gets old.
It does not, and I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun.
No problem, man. Well, if there are no other remarks, we're going to call it here. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this video. It'll be... I just can't express my gratitude enough for being able to get people like Farseer or Strobe on these kind of things. I'm going to continue to do this series as time goes on. I'm going to get more people on the interview stage, I want to say, I guess. I'm terrible at these outros, okay? I kind of make this stuff up on the fly. But, yeah. Look forward to the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. May the Force be with you all. Peace.